discussing the events of the week, two events this week. It's early February and I am in Europe. I attended a seminar at the Polytech in Zurich. The seminar was a speaker from Oxford, Michael Bronstein, who's a graph neural network person. He's been head of graph search or graph research at Twitter. He also is a professor at Oxford. He was talking about physics-based graph neural networks, and I think the main takeaways from his talk were that there's really sort of a blurred line between different architectures, whether it's convolutional neural nets, graph nets, or transformers, that all these things have a lot of things in common, and you can look at them as different tools for different purposes with different compute budgets. And in particular, what they're all doing, though, is take advantage of symmetries or breaking of symmetries, which is kind of interesting because when you attend physics seminars, for example, the word of symmetry comes a lot because in essence, stuff is when symmetries break. And that's really also what computer vision takes advantage of. You know, to detect stuff, you need symmetries to break. And that's really, I think, the biggest takeaway from this talk. The second event I want to discuss is a paper, and the paper is multimodal architecture, text video architecture that takes into account very specific intricacies of text, which is important words. I'm going to discuss that in more detail, but the authors are developing a sort of bird-like architecture, so a masked architecture, which is different from the GPT architecture, that it's not sequentially masking, but sort of randomly masking across the block space, and then combining the masking of text and video and adding a significant strength index to it, which is really taking advantage of important words. I think the main takeaway of this paper is that you can take strengths of different modalities and improve a model, and therefore the sum is more than its individual parts, literally. This is not even on podcast. It's February 4th, 2024. This is Krim Telco. It's a Sunday. There's no update. For the year, we're down 19%. The market is up 3.6%. We're underperforming by 22.6%. Maybe just real quick about the market development. On Friday, we had a very strong day because of Facebook and Amazon, and we had a sell-off in Tesla, which fortunately towards the end of the day recovered. Tesla closed almost flat, even though the market was still up almost 1.5%, meaning the NASDAQ, and that's of course a massive underperformance. Now, if we analyze what happened, is there has been FUD around a recall, that Tesla has to recall all its vehicles because of some parking light issues. What in reality is, it's literally about icons that are on the screen that indicate when you are in rear or when you are when you do things like that. Really not important. Software update, not a problem at all. Now they're being harassed by NHTSA that they have to send letters to people, which is just a waste and some money, of course, going out the window. But in general, there's nothing wrong with this, and it's just, I mean, nothing wrong in the sense, this is not a recall where 2 million vehicles have to be shipped to a garage and fixed mechanically. This is a software update, which of course is what Tesla is all about. So unfortunately, we have this kind of FUD in the markets. We have to live with it. We hope that Tesla negativity at some point will bottom out. In our view, it will bottom out because the market is incredibly strong. Tesla is delivering lower cost, higher performance, which is exactly what we expect them to do. Just one example, BMW is launching their Model Y competitor, which is what they call X or XI or whatever. They have all these different names. It's very confusing. But let's say they have an electric car, which is competitive with Tesla, but the car is more than double the price. And to me, some people are saying, well, it's a risk because they're subsidizing the car, which is to some extent true in the US. The lease rates are comparable to the Model Y, even though, of course, the price is double, and therefore you have to say, well, who's subsidizing this? But in our opinion, subsidized products can only last that long. It's not a sustainable way to compete. One way to compete with Tesla is through luxury, and there's Ferrari, which is sort of the Hermes of cars, and that's fine. Ferrari is a good company. It's also a stock that one should own. I think it makes sense to own Ferrari, but it's for very different reasons. And the comparison between Tesla and Ferrari is simply Ferrari is delivering low volume, high price, high margins. Tesla is high volume, low price, and high margins. That's the difference. We have much more growth with Tesla. And the question whether Tesla should keep growing its volumes, the answer is yes. Maybe not at the pace that they would like to, simply because they need to penetrate more market share with lower priced vehicles. As far as where they are right now, they can still grow about mid-double digits. And what we hope for is that the sales growth will come from two different, so we expect sales growth, and then we expect earnings growth, and we expect ASP growth. So it's a cascade that hopefully will do exactly the reverse of what it's been doing in the last 2 years. So in the last 2 years, we had volume growth, but lower ASPs, lower gross margins, lower profits. We expect this to reverse because number one, ASPs are stabilizing. Number two, margins will increase. And number three, we will have accretive software. Now let's talk about the two events from last week. First, Michael Bronstein, he's a lecturer at Oxford. He was talking about physics-based graph neural networks. Now, the most important thing here, when he talks about physics-based, what he's really talking about is some form and notion of symmetry. And what that means is that when you look at, let's say, when you look at a number, right? When you look at the number 3, and you take a picture of the number 3 in sort of pixel space, the number 3 is, just the number 3. But if you move left or right from the number 3, you have the same exact picture, which is called equivariance. And you also have invariance, which is if you change anything about that picture, versus if you rotate it, you have the same number 3. So that is something that, in lay terms, you can say, well, there's a certain symmetry to the number 3 that we could take advantage of. And this is what convolutional neural networks did. And I think it's very interesting to understand this also from a historical perspective. When Jan LeCun et al. Came up with this idea of convolutional neural networks, they didn't just pull this thing out of their behind. This was a concept from physics. Whether the concept from physics has been explicitly inspired or whether it was just luck, doesn't matter. It's a concept of physics. And if you look at the further evolution of graphics and rendering, we have, let's say, the concept of diffusion. Diffusion is another idea from physics which Bronstein was discussing. So he was sort of discussing this concept that we're getting more and more ideas from physics that are implemented in computer vision and image recognition. And the fundamental question of why is that even possible is there's a physics answer to that, which is physics is all about symmetries, because stuff is about when symmetry breaks. So if you can find architectures and models that can take advantage of breaking symmetries, you have a chance to detect stuff and you have a chance to perform things like computer vision. I want to add to this. Now, Bronstein was talking about some models and some ideas that he has, which to me are, it's interesting, but like always when I do these paper discussions, my goal is really how does this all apply to robotics or embodied decision-making agents? How can we take advantage of this? And I think I did my recent episode, the part 3 of foundation models for embodied decision-making agents, hopefully grasps that concept, which is that we have sort of a linear progression of ideas within the computer graphics space, which are all based on symmetries, one way or the other, whether it's convolutional neural nets, whether it's occupancy networks or transformers. They all have different types of architectures, different types of mathematics behind them, and different types of usefulness. Okay, in other words, you can use transformers for almost everything because they are general, and you can use multimodal transformers or multimodal encoders, decoders, and mass decoders, which in the end sort of merges into transformer architecture. The problem, of course, is you have to think about compute budget, so it's always a trade-off. And therefore, we have different applications such as occupancy networks, which have very low compute budgets, which could potentially be very useful for robotics. And this is kind of the world we live in right now. We don't know what's going to come next in terms of maybe a new architecture will pop on the scene that will change everything. But if you really think about the last 10 years of just computer vision, it's been a steady progression of the same concept, which is how can we take advantage of symmetry and symmetry breaking for detecting stuff. This is really what it's all about. And whether it's message passing in graph neural nets, whether it's convolutional neural nets, or whether it's message passing through transformers, which is just a really, if you think about what's the difference between transformer and graph neural nets? Well, the information transformer is captured in tokens and then blocks that are comprised of tokens. And you can say, well, that's just another representation of nodes and edges. In a sense, you could say that. I am certainly technically a little bit now out on the limb here, and some researchers might say what I'm saying now is nonsense, but in principle, it is the same thing. Whether you have a self-attention mechanism based on tokens and blocks, or whether you have a graph and edges and things like that, nodes and edges, it's not very different. And then you can add compute into the nodes, which you can do also in transformers, and then you can see how these two architectures morph together. So again, summarize Michael Bronstein's talk was about physics-based graph neural nets, and really interesting how you can look at graph neural nets as a sort of symmetry breaking type method to detect stuff, and also to take advantage of symmetries in terms of saving compute, which is very important. The second event I want to talk about is actually just a paper I discussed, and this paper is, I'm going to put the exact names in the show notes. I'm not going to name the papers anymore. I think it's just a lot of words that don't mean anything. Anybody's interested can just go and check the show notes and then do a search, find it on archive. It's much easier. So this paper just looks at multimodal architectures for text and image that can be used for text, image, and also video, video work, whether it's video search or video generation or things along those lines. Now, what I find very interesting about this paper is, one is they sort of do a combined encoder. So that's one thing they're doing. So they're combining they combine the encoder of the text with the encoder of the image, and they're trying to take advantage of that in terms of efficient compute and things like that. That's one thing, but the other thing, which I found much more interesting though, is that they're using something called significant strength index, or S3, just the name doesn't matter. And what they're trying to take advantage of here is the fact that text usually has significant words. Okay, so if there is a sentence, there's a boy in a red shirt riding a skateboard, there are some significant words that matter to this text, and we can use that to depict an image. Let's say to caption an image, we can use the fact that there are significant words that should immediately depict the image. So we can kind of save on compute time, we can save on architecture time, we can save a lot of we can save on a lot of things if we take advantage of these, if you think about it, if you will, intricacies of text, and we combine them with video. And what this really means is that, look, when you do multimodal transformers, for example, okay, let's just do multimodal transformers. Let's just leave it at that. If you do that, you're not just combining information. That's one thing, yes. But what you're also able to do is take advantage of different modalities and their strengths, combine them, and therefore get more out of it. So the sum is literally more than the parts in this context. This is what's so powerful about this paper. This has really opened my eyes to the idea that when you do multimodal, it's not just, okay, I have a little bit of text and a little bit of video. If I combine it, I just have more information about the scene. No, I can also take advantage of intricacies of text that I don't have in video, because video doesn't have that, okay? Video doesn't have significant words that capture the video. Video has other things, such as significant features that capture the video. So I could also, if I do, let's say, video search where I put in text and I want to find the video, or if I do video captioning where I want to have a machine that automatically captions video, or whichever way I'm going, what's interesting about this, in my opinion, is really the fact that we can take advantage of the particular modality and then combine the modalities and get more out of the combination. This is the key. So to summarize, Michael Bronstein's presentation on graph neural nets really teaches me that there is a sort of progression in terms of taking advantage of symmetries when it comes to computer graphics. And this paper about using text and video in a different way and using different architectures, in particular using the strength of text to take advantage of multimodal video text training and inference. This particular paper teaches me that there is specific strengths in different modalities that can be exploited, and therefore the sum can be more than the parts. Thank you.